The emergency klaxon screamed through every corridor of New Hebron colony. Elena Vasquez ran through the command center, her boots clanging against the metal floors as red warning lights painted everything in blood-colored shadows. Outside the reinforced windows, the night sky of their agricultural world burned with descending ships. Not rescue ships, not traders, warships. How long until they reach us? Elena demanded, gripping the edge of the communications console. Her knuckles turned white. 17 minutes to orbital bombardment range, replied Marcus's father, Chief Engineer David Park. His hands shook as he worked the controls. Maybe 20 if we're lucky. Elena activated the emergency broadcast system. Her voice would now transmit on every Galactic Council frequency, every standard distress channel, every possible way to cry for help across the stars. This is New Hebron Colony, Human Settlement Designation NH774. We are under attack by unknown hostile forces. 50,000 civilians require immediate evacuation assistance. Repeat, this is an emergency. We need help, she sent the message again, and again, and again. In the Galactic Council chambers 300 light-years away, Representative Thelmora heard the desperate human voice. The insectoid alien's mandibles clicked in irritation, another interruption to the trade negotiation discussions. He checked the colony designation. Human, recent members, primitive species from a backwater planet they called Earth. Deathworld designation, actually, though Thelmora found that classification absurd. Any species that evolved on such a harsh planet should have been stronger. The human colony requests emergency assistance, announced the Council's AI coordinator. Denied, Thelmora said immediately. Several other representatives nodded agreement. Our emergency response fleets are allocated for critical members only. Humans have been part of the Council for barely 15 cycles. They can manage their own problems. The transmission indicates 50,000 civilians, the AI noted. Then they should have chosen a better defended location, Thelmora replied. Resource allocation must be efficient. We cannot waste military assets on every minor settlement that encounters raiders. This matter is closed. The vote never happened. The discussion ended. The SOS continued transmitting into the void unanswered. On New Hebron, Elena watched the tactical display with growing horror. The ships were close enough now to identify. Crash swarm vessels. The locust-like raiders who swept through poorly defended systems, taking everything of value and leaving nothing alive. They were known, they were documented, and they were coming. Mom, I'm scared. 8-year-old Marcus tugged at his mother's sleeve. Sarah Park had brought her son to the command center because there was nowhere safe left to hide him. I know, baby, Sarah whispered, pulling Marcus close. But we're going to get through this. Elena kept transmitting. This is New Hebron. We are under attack by Kresh swarm forces. They will reach us in 10 minutes. Please, anyone, we have children here. We have families. Please help us. The first orbital strikes hit the northern agricultural zones. Massive explosions turned 10,000 acres of wheat fields into burning craters. The shockwaves rattled the command center windows. Marcus screamed and buried his face in his mother's chest. Evacuate all civilians to the underground shelters, Elena ordered. Her voice remained steady even as her heart hammered. David, how many can we fit in the deep bunkers? Maybe 5,000, David said quietly. If we pack them tight, 50,000 people, 5,000 spaces. The math was simple and terrible. Elena made the hardest decision of her life. Children first, then parents with children, then everyone else by lottery. Move now. The evacuation began in chaos. Families ran through the corridors, clutching photographs and stuffed animals and whatever they could carry. Some people screamed. Some prayed. Some simply walked in silence, knowing they would not make it to the shelters in time. Commander Sarah Chen received the distress call 3 days into her patrol route. Her destroyer, the UTFS Vigilant, picked up the repeating transmission from New Hebron. Sarah listened to Elena Vasquez's increasingly desperate voice and felt ice form in her stomach. Navigation. Plot a course to New Hebron, Sarah ordered. Maximum burn. I don't care if we melt the engines. Commander, that's 40 hours away at emergency speed, her navigator replied. If they're already under attack and then we get there and find survivors, Sarah snapped. Move. The Vigilant raced through space, pushing its fusion drives beyond safe limits. Sarah listened to the broadcast from New Hebron. She heard Elena's voice until the transmission cut off after 18 hours. She heard the silence that followed. She knew what that silence meant. When the Vigilant finally reached New Hebron, they found a graveyard. The colony structures were slag. The agricultural zones were burned earth. The orbital platforms were debris. Sarah sent down recovery teams in radiation suits, hoping against hope. They found one escape pod in a debris field, its emergency beacon barely functional. 12 survivors huddled inside, including Marcus Park. His parents had shoved him into the pod at the last second, along with 11 other children and one teacher. They had watched through the viewport as their parents sealed the hatch and stayed behind, knowing the pod could only hold 12. Sarah herself opened the pod. Marcus stared up at her with empty eyes. He was holding a stuffed bear with one ear burned off. "My mom and dad," Marcus whispered. "They said someone would come. They said the council would send help." Sarah knelt down and pulled the boy close. Around her, the other survivors sobbed or sat in silence. The teacher, an elderly woman named Mrs. Chen, just kept repeating, "They never came. We called and they never came." "I know," Sarah said softly. She looked at the ruins of New Hebron through the viewport. 50,000 people, an entire community, gone because the Galactic Council decided it was not efficient to help. Sarah had the Vigilance computers download every transmission from New Hebron's satellite network. Every SOS call, every desperate plea, every moment of that 18-hour nightmare before the transmitter died. She also pulled the Galactic Council's communication logs. She wanted to know if anyone had heard, if anyone had listened, if anyone had cared. The logs showed that 17 council members had received the distress call in real time. Thelmora had dismissed it in 45 seconds. No vote had been taken. No rescue had been authorized. No one had even pretended to care. Sarah Chen made a decision. She set course for Earth, carrying 12 survivors and a data file that would change everything. The Vigilant left the ruins of New Hebron behind, but Sarah knew the galaxy would soon learn what happened when you ignored a human cry for help. As the destroyer accelerated away, Marcus Park sat in the medical bay, still clutching his bear. He did not cry. He had no tears left, but he made himself a promise in his 8-year-old heart. Someday he would make sure this never happened again. Someday he would make the ones who ignored them pay. The galaxy was about to discover that humans remembered, and humans never forgave those who let children burn. The news hit Earth like a nuclear explosion. Every screen, every feed, every communication channel carried the same story. New Hebron was gone. 50,000 humans dead. The Galactic Council had ignored their cries for help. Admiral James Korikoff watched the footage in his office at Pacific Fleet Command. He was a big man, scarred from 3 different wars with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much death. He had lost his daughter in a mining accident 5 years ago. He knew what it felt like to lose someone and have no one to blame. But this was different. This time there were people to blame. The UN Security Council convened within hours. Every nation sent representatives. Every corporate alliance. Every colony system. They met in Geneva. And for the first time in humanity's fractious history, every single delegate agreed on something. Secretary General Amara Okonkwo stood at the podium. She was a xenobiologist by training, someone who had spent her life building bridges between humans and aliens. She had advocated for joining the Galactic Council. She had believed in cooperation. Now she played the audio recordings for the entire assembly. Elena Vasquez's voice filled the chamber. "This is New Hebron. We need help. Please, we have children here." Then came Thelmora's response, pulled from the Council's own communication logs. "Denied. Resource allocation must be efficient." "This matter is closed." The chamber fell silent. Then someone in the back began to clap. Slow, deliberate, sarcastic. Others joined. The applause built into a roar of fury. Delegates shouted. Some wept openly. The Russian ambassador stood and declared simply, "We should burn their worlds to ash." "No," Amara said firmly. Her voice cut through the chaos. "We will not become butchers, but we will ensure this never happens again. We will show them what happens when you abandon humanity." The vote was unanimous. The United Terran Fleet would mobilize. Every ship, every crew, every weapon. This would not be a police action or a rescue mission. This would be war. Admiral Korikoff was given supreme command. He stood before the assembly and accepted with one statement: "They will learn to fear the sound of human engines. They will learn that when we ask for help, the galaxy answers." and they will learn that we never ever forget. What the Galactic Council did not know was that humanity had been preparing. Oh, they thought they knew. They had cataloged Earth's official military fleet. 300 warships, they calculated. Modest, barely a threat to any major council power. They were idiots. Humanity had built an auxiliary fleet hidden in plain sight. Mining vessels with weapons bays behind their ore processors, colony ships with concealed missile tubes, commercial haulers with armor plating disguised as cargo containers. Every corporation, every mining company, every colony transport had received quiet instructions years ago. Build for war. Hide it in peace. The corporations had complied eagerly. There was profit in defense contracts. There was pride in being ready. And there was a deep ancestral human instinct that said you should always have a gun under the table, even if you never planned to use it. Now the disguises came off. The mining ship Profitable Venture revealed itself as the heavy cruiser it had always been. The colony transport New Beginnings deployed weapons that could crack a moon. The commercial hauler Steady Income turned out to be a carrier capable of launching 200 combat drones. Within a week, the United Terran fleet numbered 2,400 warships. The galaxy watched in stunned disbelief as Earth's orbital space filled with vessels that had seemingly appeared from nowhere. News networks across Council space broadcast the footage on repeat. Humans, the species everyone had dismissed as weak primitives, had been preparing for war the entire time. Ambassador Valar arrived at Earth with a diplomatic convoy. He was a tall, graceful alien from the Valanthi species, with blue skin and 3 eyes that could see in multiple spectrums. He was genuinely apologetic, carrying official statements from several council members expressing regret over New Hebron. He requested a meeting with Admiral Korakov. He got one. They met aboard the UTFS Indomitable, humanity's largest battleship. Valar entered the conference room surrounded by his diplomatic staff, all carrying data pads with offers of future cooperation, technology exchanges, and mutual defense pacts. Korakov sat at the table with Commander Sarah Chen on his right and Dr. Amara Okonkwo on his left. He did not stand when Valar entered. He did not offer a handshake. He simply stared at the alien with cold, dead eyes. "Ambassador," Korakov said flatly, "you have 60 seconds. Valar blinked all 3 eyes in surprise. "Admiral, I come bearing the sincere apologies of the Galactic Council. What happened to New Hebron was a tragic failure of our emergency response protocols. We wish to make amends and offer—" "You don't apologize after children burn," Korakov interrupted. His voice was quiet but carried the weight of a guillotine blade. "You answer for it. Admiral, please, I understand your anger, but 60 seconds is up. Commander Chen, escort the ambassador to his ship." Sarah stood smoothly. "This way, Ambassador." Valar's diplomatic training crumbled. "You cannot mean to go to war over this. The Council is willing to negotiate reparations, investigate the officials responsible." Korakov stood. He was a full head taller than Valar and twice as broad. "We sent 50,000 people to New Hebron to grow wheat, to build farms, to raise families. Your council heard them scream for help and decided it was not efficient to care. Tell me, Ambassador, what is the efficient response to genocide through negligence?" "It was not genocide," Valar protested. "It was the Kresh Swarm, not the Council. The Council let it happen," Sarah said coldly. "Same thing." Amara spoke for the first time. Her voice was sad. "Ambassador, I spent 20 years building relationships with Council species. I believed in cooperation. I believed we were better together. But my people need to see that abandoned humans matter as much as any other species. Right now, we don't believe that. You need to make us believe it." "How?" Valar asked desperately. "What will satisfy humanity?" "Justice," Korakov said. "We're going to find every pirate, raider, and scavenger who preys on undefended colonies. We're going to eliminate them. We're going to do the job your council was too cowardly and greedy to do yourselves. And we're going to make sure that next time someone screams into the dark, the galaxy answers." The meeting ended. Valar returned to his ship and sent his report to the council. The message was simple. The humans were serious. The humans were angry. And the humans had enough firepower to make their anger everyone's problem. The Terran Armada launched from Earth orbit in the largest fleet movement in human history. 2,400 warships formed up in formations that stretched across thousands of kilometers. Each ship carried crews who had volunteered eagerly. Each crew member had seen the footage from New Hebron. Each one knew someone who died there. Admiral Korakov stood on the bridge of the Indomitable and gave the order. "All ships, this is Korakov. Set course for Kresh space. We're going hunting. Show them what happens when you make humans cry for help." The fleet jumped to faster-than-light travel. Behind them, Earth watched and waited. Across the colonies, humans armed themselves and prepared to defend their own. In the Galactic Council chambers, representatives panicked and argued and scrambled to understand what they had unleashed. Marcus Park watched the Armada depart from the observation deck of the hospital ship where the survivors were recovering. He pressed his hand against the viewport as the warships vanished into the black. He was 8 years old and small for his age, but he made himself stand straight. "I'll join them," he whispered, "when I'm old enough. I promise, Mom, I promise, Dad, I'll make them pay." The galaxy was about to learn a hard lesson. Humans were not the strongest species, not the fastest, not the smartest. But humans were the species that never stopped coming, and once you made an enemy of humanity, you stayed an enemy forever. The Kresh swarm called their staging world Kelvara Prime. It was a hot, rocky planet with minimal atmosphere, perfect for their insectoid biology. Hundreds of hive ships orbited the planet, each one the size of a human city. The Kresh had raided this sector of space for 200 years without serious opposition. They took resources from weak colonies and moved on before military forces could respond. It was efficient. It was profitable. It was safe, until the humans arrived. The Terran Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kelvara system. 2,400 warships appeared on Kresh sensors simultaneously. The swarm's military coordinator, a massive warrior drone named Scretch, stared at the tactical display in confusion. This many ships? For a retaliatory strike? It made no sense. The humans had lost one colony. One. This response was insane. Scretch sent the standard hail. "Human vessels, you are trespassing in Kresh sovereign space. Withdraw immediately or face destruction." Admiral Korakov's response was broadcast on every frequency. "Kresh swarm, this is Admiral James Korakov of the United Terran Fleet. You attacked New Hebron colony. You killed 50,000 human civilians. You ignored evacuation protocols and murdered children. We are here to collect payment for those lives. Surrender your fleet or we will take it from your corpses." Scratch clicked his mandibles in amusement. Humans were known as soft species. Emotional. They would make threats, perhaps destroy a few ships, then accept tribute and withdraw. This was how civilized warfare worked in the galaxy. You posture, you negotiate, you exchange resources, and everyone went home. Scretch did not understand humans at all. The Kresh fleet launched to meet the human armada. 800 hive ships, each one bristling with plasma weapons and swarm missile launchers. They had numerical disadvantage but superior individual firepower. The Kresh had fought dozens of species and won every time. They were confident. The battle began at extreme range. Missiles crossed the black void between fleets. Point defense systems lit up space with laser fire. The first kills went to the Kresh. 3 human destroyers vanished in nuclear fireballs. The Kresh warriors cheered. Then the human fleet did something unexpected. They accelerated. Directly at the Kresh line. No maneuvering. No clever tactics. Just straight-line acceleration at maximum burn. "They're charging!" Scretch hissed in disbelief. "They're actually charging our battle line." The human ship slammed into the Kresh formation like a hammer into glass. Point-blank range fighting erupted across a front that stretched for thousands of kilometers. Plasma beams cut through armor. Railgun rounds punched through hulls. Nuclear warheads detonated in clusters. Ships from both sides died by the dozens, but the humans kept coming. Commander Sarah Chen commanded the heavy cruiser Retribution. Her ship took a plasma hit that melted the entire port side. Alarms screamed. Crew members died in the explosion. Sarah's second officer shouted that they should withdraw for repairs. "Negative," Sarah said calmly. She steered the dying Retribution directly at a Kresh hive ship. "All hands prepare for boarding action. We're going in." The Retribution crashed into the hive ship's docking bay at 70 meters per second. The impact killed 50 crew members instantly. The ship embedded itself into the Kresh vessel like an arrow in a target. Sarah grabbed her rifle and her breaching equipment. "Marines, with me. Let's show these bugs what Deathworlders can do." 200 human Marines poured into the Kresh hive ship. They fought in zero gravity and narrow corridors in the dark when the power failed. The Kresh warriors were larger, stronger, with armored exoskeletons and razor-sharp claws. They should have won easily. But humans fought like demons. A Kresh warrior slashed open Marine Corporal James Rodriguez's chest. The wound would have killed any civilized species instantly. Rodriguez emptied his magazine into the warrior's face, then kept fighting for another 40 seconds before he collapsed. By then he had killed 3 more. The Kresh began to panic. These humans would not stop. A Kresh warrior severed a human's arm. The human picked up a piece of debris with his remaining hand and beat the warrior to death with it. A human with a sucking chest wound crawled through a corridor leaving a blood trail, just to place a demolition charge on a critical support beam. Sarah's team fought their way to the Hive ship's command center. The Kresh Queen waited there, surrounded by her largest warriors. She was massive, easily 3 times the size of a human, with poison glands that could kill with a single spray. "You cannot win," the Queen hissed. "My warriors will tear you apart." Sarah leveled her rifle at the Queen's head. Her armor was cracked. Blood ran down her face from a head wound. She had lost count of how many Kresh she had killed. "Your warriors are dead or dying. Your ship is lost. But I'm feeling generous today. Surrender and I'll let your larvae live." The Queen's eyes widened. "You would not. Even humans would not murder children." Sarah stepped forward. Her voice was cold enough to freeze nitrogen. "You murdered 50,000 of ours. Try me." The Queen looked into Sarah's eyes and saw truth there. This human would do it. This human would vent the larval chambers into space without hesitation. The Queen had seen the footage from New Hebron. She had watched human children burn. She understood now that humans were not soft. They were not weak. They were survivors from a death world, and they had brought that world's brutality to space. "I surrender," the Queen whispered. Sarah nodded. Smart bug. The battle for Kelvara Prime lasted 14 hours. When it ended, 80% of the Kresh fleet was destroyed. The human fleet had lost 300 ships, but 2,100 remained operational. More importantly, the humans had captured 50 Kresh hive ships intact, along with their queens and larvae. Admiral Korokov broadcast his terms to the remaining Kresh forces. "You will withdraw from all raiding activities. You will provide restitution to every colony you have attacked. You will submit to human oversight of your military operations. If you refuse, we will exterminate your species. You have 12 hours to decide." The Kresh agreed, and 6 galactic news networks broadcast footage from the battle. The entire galaxy watched in horror as human marines fought through Kresh hive ships. They saw humans with mortal wounds continuing to fight. They saw human ships ramming enemy vessels when their weapons failed. They saw humans refuse to retreat, refuse to surrender, refuse to die easily. The footage went viral across 10,000 worlds. Species that had dismissed humans as primitives suddenly reconsidered. These were not soft beings. These were apex predators from a death world, and they had just shown the galaxy what that meant. In the Galactic Council chambers, Representative Thelmora watched the footage with growing dread. He had dismissed the human colony. He had refused their call for help. Now he watched as human soldiers fought like monsters from nightmare. He saw the casualty reports. 300 ships lost, but the humans celebrated victory. What species considered that acceptable? A death world species. That's what Ambassador Valar sent urgent messages to the Council. "We must negotiate with the humans immediately." They are not going to stop. They are not satisfied with one victory. This is just the beginning. But the Council was paralyzed by fear and indecision. Some wanted to mobilize against the human threat. Others wanted to apologize and offer reparations. A few wanted to just ignore the situation and hope it went away. They argued and debated while the Terran Armada refueled and prepared for its next target. Marcus Park watched the battle footage from his hospital room. He saw Commander Chen leading the boarding action. He saw Marines fighting with wounds that should have killed them. He saw humans doing what the Galactic Council had refused to do, protecting the weak and punishing the guilty. His 8-year-old mind could not fully understand the tactics or strategy, but he understood the message. Humans were strong. Humans protected their own. "I'll join them," Marcus whispered again. His burns were healing slowly. The doctors said he would be scarred for life. Marcus did not care about scars. He cared about making sure no other child had to watch their parents die while the galaxy ignored their screams. Commander Sarah Chen sat in her quarters aboard the captured hive ship. Her wounds were bandaged. Her armor was being repaired. In 6 hours, she would be back on duty planning the next operation. But for now, she allowed herself to feel the weight of what they had done. They had killed thousands of Kresh. They had destroyed hundreds of ships. They had proven that humans could be just as brutal and merciless as any species in the galaxy. Sarah looked at the photo on her desk. Her wife and son back on Earth. She wondered what they would think of what she had become. Then she remembered Elena Vasquez's voice on the recording. The desperation, the fear, the final silence. Sarah pushed the guilt away. This was necessary. This was justice the galaxy needed to learn, and humans were very good teachers. The Terran Armada did not stop. Admiral Korokov had made a promise, and humans kept their promises. The fleet moved through the sector like a cleansing fire, targeting every pirate base, every raider outpost, every criminal organization that preyed on weak colonies. The second target was the Skrull Confederacy, a loose alliance of pirates who had been raiding the outer systems for decades. They surrendered without firing a shot when 200 human warships appeared at their headquarters. The third target was a group of slavers operating near the Volanthi border. The humans freed 8,000 slaves from 17 different species and executed the slavers in public broadcasts. But what shocked the galaxy was not just the military victories. It was who the humans protected. At the colony world of Tekla Minor, a small settlement of Graxian refugees sent a distress call about raiders. The Galactic Council had ignored it. The Graxians were not even council members. They were refugees from a failed state, barely recognized as sentient by most species. The humans responded in 4 hours. A human battle group destroyed the raiders and left behind a garrison to protect the colony. When grateful Graxians asked why humans would help them, Commander Sarah Chen simply said, "Because you called for help." That's enough. The gesture rippled through the galaxy. Minor species, ignored populations, refugee communities, all began to see humans differently, not as primitives or warmongers, but as protectors, beings who actually meant it when they said all sentient life had value. 3 more colonies pledged alliance to humanity. 2 independent trade guilds offered supply contracts. A mining consortium asked for human protection in exchange for resource rights. The Terran sphere of influence grew rapidly, not through conquest but through basic decency. In the Galactic Council chambers, the political situation deteriorated. Representative Thelmora led a faction demanding military action against the human expansion. "They are out of control," he declared to the assembled representatives. "They attack whoever they wish. They ignore council jurisdiction. They are building an empire." "They are doing our job," countered Representative Velsha of the Koresh Alliance. "How many distress calls has this council ignored in the last cycle? How many colonies died because we decided they were not strategic enough to save? The humans are showing us our own failure." The council split into 3 factions. Thelmora's Warhawks wanted to mobilize the council defense fleet to contain humanity by force. Velsha's reformers wanted to negotiate and learn from human methods. The third faction, led by Ambassador Valar, wanted to find middle ground. Valar requested a private meeting with Dr. Amara Okonkwo on the neutral station of Crossroads. The station was ancient, built by a long-dead civilization, and its neutral status was recognized by all major powers. It was as safe a meeting place as existed in the current political chaos. Amara arrived with minimal security. Just 4 Marines and Commander Chen. Valar came alone, a gesture of trust that Amara appreciated. They met in a quiet cafe overlooking the station's massive viewport. Outside, the stars turned slowly. "Dr. Okonkwo," Valar began, "I need to understand. What will satisfy humanity? What will make your fleet stop?" Amara sipped her coffee. Real coffee, imported from Earth at enormous expense. "Ambassador, we don't want territory. We don't want tribute. We want exactly what we've been doing. We want a galaxy where distress calls are answered, where children don't die because someone decided saving them was not efficient." "But the Council cannot respond to every distress call," Valar said. "There are not enough ships, not enough resources. Choices must be made." "Then make better choices," Amara replied. "Stop prioritizing corporate interests over civilian lives. Stop measuring value by species status. Start treating all sentient beings as equally worth saving." Valar's 3 eyes blinked in sequence. "You are asking us to restructure the entire foundation of council governance." "Yes," Amara said simply. "That's exactly what we're asking." Before Valar could respond, alarms blared through the station. Both diplomats rushed to the viewport. Outside, ships were dropping out of faster-than-light travel. Dozens of them. Pirates or raiders or some other threat. Then the tactical display clarified. These were not pirates. They were heading for the human colony of New Sarajevo, 2 jumps away. New Sarajevo had been founded just 3 years ago. 8,000 colonists, mostly families. Mostly farmers, Amara's communicator crackled. Dr. Okonkwo, this is Korikov. We're tracking the raiders. They're moving fast. Looks like they think they can hit a target while we're busy talking. How long until you can respond? Amara demanded. 6 hours at emergency speed, Korikov replied. It'll be close, 6 hours. The raiders would reach New Sarajevo in 4. It would be New Hebron all over again. Amara felt the ice form in her stomach. Not again. Please God, not again. But the Terran Armada had learned from New Hebron. Admiral Korikov had positioned rapid response fleets throughout the sector. Small, fast groups of destroyers and frigates that could reach threatened colonies quickly. The cost in fuel and crew fatigue was enormous, but Korikov had been adamant. Never again would a human colony stand alone. The rapid response fleet designated Hammer 3 was only 45 minutes from New Sarajevo. 12 ships. It was not a large force, but it was enough. Commander Helen Torres commanded Hammer 3, and she gave the order immediately. Maximum burn. We're not losing another colony. The raiders reached New Sarajevo expecting an easy target. They found 12 human warships waiting in orbit. The battle lasted 17 minutes. The raiders were annihilated. Not a single ship escaped. The colonists never even had to evacuate to shelters. Amara watched the battle reports with tears streaming down her face. They had made it. This time they had made it. No one died. The children were safe. Valar watched her reaction carefully. He was beginning to understand the depth of human trauma over New Hebron. This was not about empire building or military glory. This was about protecting their own, about refusing to let tragedy happen again. You positioned fleets in advance, Valar said quietly. You expected something like this. We learned our lesson, Amara replied. The galaxy is dangerous. Help does not always arrive in time, so we make sure we are always in time, no matter the cost. The news of New Sarajevo's salvation spread quickly. Humans had not just promised to protect colonies. They had actually done it. Real-time protection, actual response. Not bureaucratic debates or resource allocation meetings. Just ships and crews willing to die to protect civilians. More species began requesting human protection. The Terran sphere of influence doubled in a week. Admiral Korikov found himself coordinating not just military operations, but humanitarian missions, trade disputes, and border patrols. Humanity was becoming the sector's de facto police force. In the council chambers, Thelmora's faction lost ground rapidly. How could they argue that humans were dangerous expansionists when footage showed humans saving colonies? How could they claim humans were warmongers when the only beings humans killed were pirates and raiders? But Thelmora was not finished. He had spent his entire career building influence in the council. He had made promises to powerful corporations who profited from the status quo. If humanity reformed the council's emergency response system, those corporations would lose contracts, lose influence, lose profit. Thelmora could not allow that. He began quietly reaching out to other species, not the major powers but the second-tier civilizations, the ones who felt threatened by human expansion, the ones who feared that Deathworld barbarians would dominate council politics. He found sympathizers. He found allies. And he began planning. Meanwhile, on Earth, Marcus Park stood in the recruitment office. He was 8 years old, but he lied and said he was 9. It did not matter. The recruiter took one look at Marcus's burn scars and knew exactly who he was. The survivor from New Hebron, the boy who lost everything. I want to join, Marcus said. I want to fight. The recruiter, a grizzled sergeant named Mills, sighed. Son, you're too young. Come back in 10 years. They didn't wait 10 years to kill my parents, Marcus said. His voice was steady. Why should I wait to pay them back? Mills looked at the boy for a long moment. Tell you what, kid. We're starting a new training program for children from the colonies. Pre-academy stuff. Classroom learning, physical training, basic skills. When you turn 18, you can apply to the Naval Academy. Deal? Marcus considered. It was not what he wanted, but it was something. Deal. As Marcus left the office, Mills watched him go. That kid was going to be trouble someday. The good kind of trouble. The kind that makes admirals and wins wars. The galaxy was changing. Old rules were crumbling. New alliances were forming. And at the center of it all was humanity, a species everyone had dismissed, showing the galaxy what it meant to actually care about the weak. Representative Thelmora stared at reports and understood that his time was running out. The council was fracturing. Human influence was growing. Something had to be done. Something decisive. He began planning for war. The Galactic Council Defense Fleet assembled at the edge of Council space near the Vantara Nebula. Representative Thelmora had spent weeks building his coalition. 15 species contributed ships. In total, 900 warships representing the Council's military might. It was smaller than the human fleet, but Thelmora argued these were professional military vessels, not retrofitted civilian ships. Quality over quantity. We are not going to destroy humanity, Thelmora announced to his war council. We are going to contain them, show them that there are limits to their expansion, force them back to their own space. Once they understand they cannot dominate the galaxy, we can negotiate from a position of strength. Some of the other representatives looked uncertain. The footage from Kelvara Prime had shown what humans could do in battle. The Marines fighting with mortal wounds. The ships that refused to retreat. But Thelmora was confident. Humans had won against pirates and raiders. This was different. This was the full might of galactic civilization. The Terran Armada met them at Vantara Nebula. Admiral Korakov brought 1,800 ships. The two fleets faced each other across 1,000,000 kilometers of space, with the glowing nebula as a backdrop. It was beautiful and terrible, the largest gathering of military force the galaxy had seen in centuries. Korakov received Thelmora's ultimatum. Withdraw all human forces beyond pre-war boundaries, accept council oversight of human military operations, submit to investigation regarding human war crimes in the destruction of the Kresh fleet. Korakov's response was simple. No. Both fleets armed weapons. Shields powered up. Crews went to battle stations. The galaxy held its breath. This was not a raid against pirates. This was two major powers about to collide. The casualties would be enormous. The political consequences would reshape the galaxy for generations. Then Dr. Amara Okonkwo took a deep breath and did something that changed everything. She activated every broadcast channel in the galaxy. Every news network, every public feed, every communication frequency. She overrode emergency systems. She hacked into entertainment channels. She made sure that every sentient being with access to communications technology saw what she was about to show them. Footage began playing. Not battle footage. Not propaganda. Just recordings. The original SOS calls from New Hebron. Elena Vasquez's voice growing more desperate by the hour. Please, we have children here. Someone, anyone, please help us. Then came the council chamber recordings. Thelmora's voice dismissive and cold. Denied. Resource allocation must be efficient. The footage showed 17 different council members receiving the distress call, showed them discussing it for 45 seconds, showed them moving on to trade negotiations while humans burned. But Amara did not stop there. She showed footage from other ignored colonies. The Graxian refugees who called for help and received nothing. The Tekla miner colonists who sent distress signals for 3 weeks. The mining station that exploded while waiting for rescue that never came. Case after case after case of the Council's emergency response system failing. Because the victims were not important enough. Amara's voice narrated over the footage. This is not about human expansion. This is not about military aggression. This is about a system that weighs lives against profit and finds lives wanting. The Galactic Council has decided that some species matter more than others. That some colonies deserve protection, while others can be left to die. We are fighting to change that. We are fighting so that every sentient being in this galaxy knows that when they scream for help, someone will answer. The footage played on every screen in Council space. Billions of civilians watched. They saw the ignored calls. They saw the bureaucratic dismissals. They saw the contempt that powerful species showed for weaker ones, and they were horrified. Public opinion turned like a tidal wave. On dozens of worlds, civilians took to the streets demanding council reform. On others, they demanded representatives resign. Military crews on Council Defense Fleet ships watched the footage and began to question why they were here, pointing weapons at humans who had done nothing except protect the weak. 3 species withdrew their ships from the defense fleet immediately. Their admiral sent messages to Korokov apologizing and requesting safe passage to leave the system. 5 more withdrew within the hour. By the time the footage finished playing, Thelmora's 900 ship fleet had been reduced to 200. Those 200 remained because their crews were true believers, or because their governments refused to back down, or simply because they had invested too much political capital to retreat. Thelmora's flagship, the Council Hammer, sat at the center of the formation. The insectoid representative had gone too far to turn back now. All ships, Thelmora commanded, fire on the human fleet. Show them that the Council will not be intimidated. The Council Hammer opened fire. Plasma beams and missile salvos crossed the void toward human ships. It was the first shot of what could become total war between humanity and galactic civilization. Admiral Korokov responded immediately. All ships, return fire. Target the Council Hammer. I want that ship disabled, not destroyed. Thelmora answers for his crimes in court, not in battle. The human fleet fired with precision. Railgun rounds targeted the Council Hammer's engines. Missiles struck its weapon systems. In 90 seconds, the flagship was crippled and drifting. Thelmora tried to order a retreat, but his communications were dead. His engines were dead. His weapons were dead. He sat in his command chair and understood that he had miscalculated everything. The remaining Council ships did not fight. Crew members mutinied on 3 vessels. Captains on 7 others surrendered immediately. The rest simply powered down their weapons and waited to see what would happen. Commander Sarah Chen led the boarding party onto the Council Hammer. She walked through corridors filled with panicking crew members who offered no resistance. She found Thelmora still sitting in his command chair, staring at the tactical display that showed his fleet scattered and broken. Representative Thelmora, Sarah said formally, you are under arrest for criminal negligence resulting in mass casualties, for ordering unprovoked military action against human forces, and for conspiracy to commit genocide by deliberately withholding emergency assistance. I am a council representative, Thelmora said weakly. I have diplomatic immunity. Not anymore, Sarah replied. The council voted to strip your immunity 30 minutes ago. Turns out they don't like being associated with someone who let children burn. The trial of Representative Thelmora became the most watched event in galactic history. The evidence was overwhelming. The prosecution presented every ignored distress call, every casual dismissal of civilian lives, every calculation that weighed profit against protection and chose profit. Thelmora's defense argued he was following standard council protocols. The prosecution agreed and argued that was exactly the problem. Thelmora was found guilty. His sentence was unique. He would spend the rest of his life living among human survivors of colonies the council had failed to protect. No luxuries, no staff. No political connections. Just one being trying to understand the consequences of his decisions by living among those who suffered them. The Vantara Accords were signed 3 weeks later. The treaty established new protocols for emergency response. Any distress call from any sentient being must be acknowledged within 1 hour. Rescue operations must begin within 12 hours, with progress reports every 6 hours. Species status was no longer a factor in emergency response priority. Enforcement of the Accords fell to humanity. The Terran fleet became the galaxy's rapid response force, with Council ships serving under human command for emergency operations. It was not the role humanity had wanted, but it was the role the galaxy needed them to fill. Admiral Korokov retired after the Accords were signed. He was 68 years old and had spent too many years watching people die. He returned to Earth and opened a small restaurant in San Francisco. Sometimes people recognized him. Sometimes they thanked him. He always said the same thing. I just did what needed doing. Commander Sarah Chen took command of the emergency response fleet. She was promoted to admiral and given oversight of 200 ships permanently assigned to rescue operations. She accepted the position on one condition. Her flagship would be named the Elena Vasquez, after the woman who died calling for help that never came. Marcus Park graduated from the pre-academy program at age 16 and was accepted into the Naval Academy at 17. He was the youngest cadet in his class. He studied emergency response tactics and rescue operations. He graduated top of his class at 21 and received his first commission aboard the Elena Vasquez, serving under Admiral Chen. On his first day aboard, Sarah took him to the memorial wall. Every member of the crew had a small plaque with their name and the colony they were protecting. Marcus added his own plaque. It read, Marcus Park, New Hebron Colony. I remember. The galaxy changed slowly. Old habits died hard. But distress calls were answered now. Emergency protocols were followed. Species that had once been ignored found themselves protected. The weak discovered they had defenders. And every ship in the galaxy knew that if they ignored a call for help, humanity would hear about it.